In the Swedish countryside, not far from the town of Sigtuna, just outside of Stockholm, there's a burial mound. It's ancient, unmarked, and local farmers give it a wide berth. They say nothing good grows there, that the soil is just wrong. Animals refuse to graze nearby, and even birds won't build their nests. For over 1,000 years, this place has been avoided. Legend says a berserker was buried there, one of Odin's greatest warriors. He was a man who had fought in countless battles, a man who had never known defeat, never fled, and never showed an ounce of mercy. But when Christianity swept through Sweden, and the old ways were cast aside, this berserker refused to yield. He wouldn't convert, wouldn't stop fighting, and wouldn't accept the new world order. He was finally brought down through trickery, a victim of poison and betrayal. They buried him with his weapons, his wolf pelt, and with full berserker honors. But something went wrong. The burial was incomplete, the death rituals left unfinished. And so, the legend goes, the warrior still waits, still prepares for battle, still dreams of Ragnarok. This is the story of what happened when modern construction workers disturbed that mound. A story of a warrior who refuses to stay dead, and of Thor himself arriving to finish what was started a millennium ago. The construction company had all the necessary paperwork. Permits, proper authorization. They were building a new, family-friendly housing development. The burial mound was simply in the way. Historic preservation had been consulted, but their surveys found nothing significant. No artifacts, no records. To them, it was just an old hill. Permission was granted to level it. The work began in August. Heavy machinery rolled in, excavators, dump trucks. The crew boss, Anders, was an experienced professional. This was routine for him. But the moment the excavator's bucket bit into the mound, things went wrong. The machine's engine died, just stopped. No warning, no mechanical failure. It was just dead. They couldn't restart it. The mechanic they called found nothing wrong, but the engine remained silent. They brought in a backup excavator. The same thing happened. The engine died the instant it touched the mound. Anders was frustrated, confused. It made no sense, but he was on a schedule. He had contracts to honor. He made a decision. They would use hand tools, manual labor. It would be slower, but it was reliable. The crew started digging with shovels, breaking through the mound's surface. Immediately, several workers became violently ill. Vomiting, dizziness, weakness. They had to stop and get medical attention. But the doctors found nothing, no toxins, no pathogens. Just a sudden, inexplicable illness that vanished the moment they left the construction site. This is when Anders called a specialist, Dr. Ingrid Larsen, an archaeologist and an expert in Viking burial practices. She arrived, took one look at the site, and knew exactly what it was. This wasn't just a mound. It was a berserker's grave. She could tell from its shape, its orientation, the specific way the soil had been layered. Berserkers were buried differently from other Vikings, with unique rituals and protections designed to ensure they rested, to keep their immense fury contained even in death. But this burial, she explained, was incomplete. The rituals had been interrupted. The berserker inside was still active, still aware, still ready to fight. Dr. Larsen urged Anders to stop, to leave the mound untouched and build around it. But Anders felt his hands were tied. The plans were approved. The investors were waiting. He had to continue. Dr. Larsen warned him, pleaded with him. Disturbing an incomplete berserker burial was incredibly dangerous. The warrior inside wouldn't understand that he was dead. He would perceive any disturbance as a threat, a challenge to his territory. The machine failures, the sudden illnesses, those were warnings. The berserker's rage was reaching out from the grave. If they continued, the consequences would be severe. But Anders was a practical man. He didn't believe in curses, angry ghosts, or Viking warriors rising from their graves. He dismissed her concerns as superstitious nonsense and ordered his crew to push forward. They reinforced the equipment, gave the workers extra safety gear, and resumed the excavation. That night, the first worker died. He was found in a tent, his face a mask of pure terror, his hands clawed, his body rigid as if he died in the middle of a scream. There were no marks, no injuries. The coroner ruled it a stress-induced heart attack, but the other workers knew. They knew it was connected to the mound. Several quit on the spot, refusing to go back to the cursed site. Anders was left with a skeleton crew, but he was stubborn. He pressed on. The excavation continued, and they finally broke through to the inner burial chamber. It was lined with stone walls carved with runes, and there, in the center, was a skeleton. It was massive, well over 7 feet tall, still clad in armor, one hand gripping a sword, the other draped in a wolf pelt that had somehow defied 1,000 years of decay. The Berserker, still in his grave, still ready for battle. Anders ordered the remains to be removed, carefully and respectfully, to be sent to a museum. But as the workers approached, the temperature in the chamber plummeted. Frost formed on the ground. Despite the summer heat, their breath turned to mist. And then the skeleton moved, just a fraction. The jaw opened slightly. The hand tightened its grip on the sword. It was as if it was waking up. The workers fled. They didn't just walk away. They ran, abandoning their equipment, their tools, their vehicles. They just ran. Only Anders remained, stubborn, defiant. He walked into the burial chamber and stood before the skeleton. He told it to stay dead. He told it this was the modern world, that there were no more battles, no more wars, no more need for berserkers. The skeleton's jaw opened wider, and it spoke, not in words, but with a sound, a deep, resonant, ancient growl. It was the sound of a fury that had been waiting 1,000 years for its release. Anders collapsed. Another heart attack, just like the first worker. But he survived. He woke up in a hospital days later, a traumatized, changed man. He immediately canceled the project, paid the penalties, and walked away from it all. He swore he would never go near that site, or any burial mound, ever again. The housing development was abandoned. The land was left alone, but the damage had been done. The Berserker was waking. The incomplete burial meant he couldn't rest, couldn't accept death. He was trapped in a liminal space between life and death, past and present. And his fury was growing, spilling out into the world around him. Animals in the area died, plants withered. People began reporting sightings of a massive, shadowy figure walking the perimeter of the mound at night, carrying a sword and wearing a wolf pelt, endlessly searching for an enemy to fight. Dr. Larson knew she had to do something. She contacted Professor Astrid Nilsson, the very expert who had helped in previous Berserker cases. Together, they dove into research and confirmed what Larson suspected. The burial rituals were incomplete. This warrior, this waiting soul, needed to be properly released. He needed to be told that Ragnarok hadn't come. He needed to be given permission to finally rest. But only someone with true authority could do that. Someone the Berserker would recognize and obey. Another great warrior, or even a god. They needed Thor, the god of thunder, protector of Midgard. The one who had led Berserkers into battle in the old days. The one they had sworn their sacred oaths to. If anyone could release this warrior, it was him. Under the cloak of midnight, they returned to the burial chamber and performed the summoning ritual. They called out to Thor, asking for his intervention, for his mercy, for his authority as a commander of warriors. For 30 minutes, there was nothing but silence. Then, a distant rumble of thunder began to grow closer. The chamber shook. A bolt of lightning struck the mound directly above them. And Thor appeared. He wasn't wearing ancient armor. He was in modern clothes, jeans, a flannel shirt, work boots. He looked like a construction worker himself, but his presence was undeniable. Power radiated from him, charging the air until it felt heavy. In the center of the chamber, the Berserker's skeleton sat bolt upright. It recognized divinity. It recognized authority. It recognized the god it had served 1,000 years ago. Thor spoke in Old Norse. He asked the Berserker his name. The skeleton answered, Bjorn, son of Eric, warrior of Odin, sworn to fight until Ragnarok, still waiting, still ready, still serving. Thor then asked if Bjorn knew how long he had waited. Bjorn didn't. Time had no meaning in the grave. Thor told him the truth. Over 1,000 years, the world had changed. The old wars were over. The old gods had withdrawn. Ragnarok had not come, and it might never come. Bjorn had waited for nothing. The Berserker's fury erupted. He refused to believe it. He refused to accept that his long vigil had been meaningless, that he had been forgotten. He rose to his full towering height, gripped his sword, and challenged Thor himself. If Ragnarok hadn't come, then he would fight the god of thunder. He would prove his worth and earn his place in Valhalla through combat. Thor sighed. He had feared this would happen. Berserkers are defined by battle. Without it, they have no purpose, no identity. Bjorn needed this fight. He needed closure. And after 1,000 years of waiting, Thor could not deny him that. He agreed to one battle, proper combat. If Bjorn won, he would earn his place in Valhalla. If he lost, he would finally accept rest. The duel began. Bjorn attacked with the full, unrestrained fury of a berserker, 1,000 years of waiting exploding into a torrent of violence. Thor simply defended. He didn't attack back. He just blocked, dodged, and absorbed the blows, letting Bjorn expend his rage, letting him release a millennium of pent-up battle lust. The fight lasted for an hour. Bjorn never tired, never slowed. The berserker fury was endless, but it was also hopeless. Thor was a god. Bjorn was a reanimated corpse. The outcome was never in doubt. Finally, Bjorn's sword shattered against Thor's arm. The berserker fell to his knees, defeated, but strangely satisfied. He had fought his battle. He had proven his worth. Thor knelt beside him and spoke quietly. He told Bjorn he was worthy, that he was honored and remembered. The final battle he'd waited for never came, but his vigil had meaning. His loyalty had value. He would be welcomed in Valhalla, not as one who died in Ragnarok, but as one who waited faithfully for 1,000 years. That, Thor explained, was its own form of glory. Bjorn nodded. He understood. He accepted. Thor placed a hand on the berserker's skull and spoke the ancient words, the final part of the death ritual that had been left incomplete. As he spoke, Bjorn's skeleton collapsed, the bones turning to dust. The wolf pelt dissolved, and the sword rusted into nothing. 1,000 years of preservation reversed in seconds. The berserker was finally released. Thor looked at Dr. Larson and Professor Nilsson. He told them to seal the mound properly and to seek out other waiting warriors. There were more out there, he said, berserkers buried improperly, slowly going mad in their graves, waiting for battles that would never come. They deserved to be remembered, honored, and released. Then he vanished. The mound was sealed with the proper rituals and is now a protected memorial. Dr. Larson and Professor Nilsson continue their work, traveling across Scandinavia, finding these forgotten graves and giving these waiting warriors the peace they've earned. And sometimes, as they perform the rituals, they feel a presence in the shadows, watching over them. Thor still watches over his warriors, ensuring they are finally allowed to rest. The waiting warrior waits no more, but others still do, loyal to ancient oaths and forgotten gods. Slowly, one by one, they are being given the honor and peace they were denied so long ago. Thanks for watching. like and subscribe if you enjoyed this content. And comment below where in the world you are listening from tonight. There will be more stories from the shadows in the north.